Michael, welcome back to the show. So happy to have you back.
Thanks. I'm glad to be here. I've had a lot of thoughts since last time we spoke, so ready to dive in whenever you are.
So the last thing and for anybody who has not watched the previous episode, highly recommend to go and do so. We talked about really difficult moments. I'm really grateful, Michael, that you shared with your with the audience and with myself the journey. Today we're going to talk about the growth part. The last thing we discussed was meditation. What I'm wondering, right? You came from this point where you were broken and you were rebuilding yourself. Keep me honest if that's a fair description.
Yes,
What are
I'll call
the
you out when you're wrong.
what are the biggest changes that you have worked on yourself since that breaking point where you're like, well, women are more than their body parts? What are the kind of elements that you had to work?
Great question. Thank you. It's a good place to launch from. In no particular order, just random answers. Feeling safe and grounded in my body, becoming caring, like actual caring about other people besides myself, but even the bigger version of that, caring about people that I have nothing to do with, meaning random people in other parts of the world that are having struggles that are different than what I experience. Empathy, compassion, self-respect, kindness, thoughtfulness, loving kindness, learning how to have fun without somebody being the consequence of it. Intimacy, connection, vulnerability, and
So that's a long list.
yes, well, that's what
That's
I
a
said,
long
just a
list.
random list based on nothing.
But okay, so these are hard things to work on, and I'll be honest, like all of us, I feel to a certain degree are working on these items. And we talked a little bit about meditation. What are the tools and techniques that helped you make actual progress on this journey?
So, as I mentioned in our last conversation, it really started with the basics of being part of a community, a fellowship and being in therapy. Then meditation joined the party. Then the next leg after that. Then the next thing was in January of 95, I got trained in Reiki. And that was a big turning point for me because it gave me like a tangible way to turn this spiritual thing that I was doing, this energetic process, and it gave it some structure. It gave it some direction. It gave it purpose. And Reiki was great for me, and it was great for the people in my life. Becoming a social worker and a counselor was huge because you have to put aside your stuff, like I was taught from the beginning. You got to leave your ego at the door and you got to leave your needs at the door. Beyond your physical safety, you just have to show up for people. And I worked with really hardcore people in the beginning. I mean, these days it's tamer what I do, but back in the day in the 90s, I was working with kids on juvenile probation. Some of them had committed murder, others had committed sexual assault, some had beaten people with baseball bats and shot people, and some have been the survivors and victims of that. I was working with families, in-home family preservation with families in crisis. So really learning how to be contained in myself and safe in myself in situations that actually weren't safe. And I'm not
Mm,
laughing at it like, oh, I could have been shot. That's funny. But I mean it more in the spirit of bad things could have happened.
yeah. No, I'm similar in a way that, I'll smile when I'm uncomfortable or when I'm thinking about a difficult time. There's no judgment here, so I appreciate
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. I'm not being insensitive. At least I'm not trying to be. So those were parts of my next group of influences and things that impacted my life. A couple of bigger things is I actually backpacked across the United States for most of the states, and it took me a good 6, 8 months to do it. And that was really impactful. Spent a lot of time on the Appalachian Trail and then headed west from there and had no real destination, but ended up in New Mexico, um, which was pretty wild. I have also spent right around the turn of the century in 1999, I spent 10 days with the Dalai Lama.
Oh,
Um,
wow. All right. Well, I'm not going to let you get away without telling that
no, I
story.
should hope not.
So for I probably would make a guess that most of our audience doesn't know the history behind the Dalai Lama. There is a how would you say, a discord between China and Tibet
Yes.
The Dalai Lama has been in Discord is probably a very light way of saying this. You can't even say something in Tibet without, danger to yourself politically. And the Dalai Lama has basically escaped to India. And the Dalai Lama is basically the spiritual leader of the Tibetan people. That's kind of the backdrop. But take it from here, share with us a little bit more. And how
Yeah.
did it even come to be that you met with the Dalai Lama? That is crazy.
Well, since you went to that part, I'm going to even go further back in a personal connection to me in that process. And I'm going to speak a little bit more about the Dalai Lama after that. But my first introduction to Buddhism was in the early mid 90s. I was living in New Jersey at the time, and in the hills of New Jersey, almost in Pennsylvania, there was a Tibetan Buddhist Learning Center, and it's still there. And it was founded by the Dalai Lama, but he's not part of it, obviously. So I'm at this New Year's retreat, 3-day retreat. My girlfriend at the time, my partner at the time, her and I went to this 3-day retreat there, and I'm noticing this guy, like all of the other monks, are wearing the burgundy and gold that Tibetan monks wear. And there's this one guy, older gentleman, that's sitting with the monks, but he's dressed in gray slacks and gray shirt, gray button-down shirt. He looked like an American janitor. And this guy was a trip, Ari. Like, I can still talk about it with the same excitement and enthusiasm. So I'm noticing him at lunchtime. And somebody would spill something. He'd have his head in the other direction. Somebody would spill something, and somehow he would be over there cleaning it up. Like the salad bowl would almost be empty. He'd be eating. He just knew when this guy was just like, it was just incredible. And I'm watching him. So there's this young man sitting across from me at the table. And I said, I didn't know how to ask this. Do you know what I mean? So I said, is that janitor like some kind of special guy? And the dude breaks out hysterically laughing, this young man. And he said to me, he goes, yes, he's actually one of the men that led the Dalai Lama out of Tibet safely. And he figured since he got the Dalai Lama to somewhere safety in Dharamsala, which became the temple that the Tibetans had in India, he said he figured he didn't want to have to wear a robe anymore and he could wear pants because he didn't like wearing a robe. But he is absolutely still a monk, and he is special and he is extraordinary. It's
Wow.
funny that you started with his escape. I happened to meet the guy that stood in the front of the line like a quarter mile ahead. He was the guy that would put his life on the line, that if there was going to be trouble, he was going to be the one that was going to get killed. And that was random. Just it worked out that way.
Wow.
So then let's move forward a bunch of years. I was living in Bloomington, Indiana, and his older brother lives in Bloomington, Indiana, and his nephews live there. So every few years he goes out there and he does some kind of public talk, like, at Indiana University with like 15, 18,000 people, just the Dalai Lama being the Dalai Lama,
Right.
and he's an amazing guy. And I just want to clarify one thing in what you said. He's the spiritual leader of Tibet, but he's also one of the segments of the spiritual. Tibetan Buddhism is its own segment of Buddhism, and he's the leader of that as well. Okay.
Appreciate that.
So anyway, I'm living in an intentional community on the outskirts of Hoosier National Forest, and I had heard the Dalai Lama was going to be doing this 10-day thing called the Kala Chakra, and that you could do it and you could go to it. And I wrote to the Tibetan center there in Bloomington. I said, hey, I'm a Buddhist practitioner. I don't participate in anything Buddhist. I've never been to your temple or your center, but I'm a Buddhist practitioner. I've been meditating daily for a really long time at this point, and I've read a lot of Buddhist stuff for give me values and directions and understanding. But I live in an intentional community. I work at a homeless shelter, and I don't have any money. And they said, well, it's really expensive to get them here and all of that. We're not going to be able to help you. I called, spoke to the guy that wrote me the letter, sorry, we can't help you. Thank you. And I was a little bit more personal with him. And he said, I'm sorry, there's nothing we can do. About a week later, I get a phone call from him, and he said, somebody, and I'm not going to mention the celebrity's name because then it becomes about him, but there was a handful of celebrities that had signed up to come to this training. And one of them had said, if there's any local people that want to come that don't have the money, I'd like to pay for them.
Wow.
So somebody who's world renowned at this point paid for me to be there.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's how I ended up there. I got invited because There's no real reason I got invited, but I got invited. And to answer the question I would ask if I was you, did you meet the Dalai Lama? No. He didn't do an audience with anybody, including the
mm,
five nationally known celebrities. He was very
mm,
clear. It was in the very second thing he said, like in 10 minutes into the training, as he said, I am not going to be taking a private audience with anybody.
mm,
So don't request it because they're just
mm.
going to have to say no to you. And it's just adding more work to our support staff. I'm not meeting with anybody. And he looked at the three of them in the front row and he goes, and he kind of made a joke. He goes, especially not the three of you, you know?
And how was the experience? What did you do there? What did you learn?
So it was 1999, meaning it's 25
Mm,
plus years
yeah,
ago. And I'm still learning lessons from what he said. But I'd love to share with you one very specific thing that he did that at the time I sort of got it, but I get it today
mm,
because of what's happening in our world. We were about 4 days in, and right before lunch, he said, we're really ahead of schedule. We're doing great. Everybody's doing great, keeping it up. And I'm sitting there with my pen, and I'm like, I'm still trying to figure out what he said on day one, but sure, yeah, we're doing great. That's what I'm going with. Because a lot of these people have been doing that work for decades. They travel
right.
from all over the world to this event, and there was a private invitation mostly.
Mm,
So he said, my translator, because he would go between speaking Tibetan, when he was doing things that were really complicated, he would
mm,
speak in Tibetan and let the translator do it. Things that were simpler, he would do in English. And then the translator would translate to Tibetan for the people that were there that were Tibetan. And
mm,
basically, the gist of what he said is my translator over there has these big index cards. If you'd have a question you'd like me to read tomorrow and answer before lunch, you can get an index card from him, fill it out, and hand it back to him. I'm going to
mm,
read them through them all tonight, and I'm going to read and answer three of them tomorrow at lunch. So he does that. Next day, he reads three of them, answers. They were all about Buddhism and how do you sit like this. And if on Tuesdays you breathe this way, just, really technical stuff that people was
mm,
like really deep. And he said, and he puts his cards down and he pulls out of his robe another card and he says, there's one of them that kept me up all night in the best way
uh,
possible. And I'm paraphrasing, and I've told this story probably 150 times, and I have no idea if I'm telling it anything like the truth at this point, but the spirit of the story is accurate. Okay.
mm,
So the emotional and spiritual is factual, but I don't know if the story is exactly the way it happened. But in essence, he read this card from a woman who was in the group, and he said, I don't want to know who you are. He said, and this is basically what it was. He's reading it and he's saying, I'm a Buddhist practitioner, I'm a wife, and I'm a mother, and I've been practicing Buddhism for 25 years. I've gotten up every morning for the last 20 something years before my whole family gets up, and I meditate in a room by myself. I still get up and make everybody breakfast. I got the
mm,
kids ready for school, got them bathed, they're brushing their teeth. I always made sure that my meditation practice did not affect our family or our
mm,
community or the work that I did in the community or on the school board. I always made sure that I could do my work and nobody lost because of it. And over the
mm,
years, I've shared some of the Buddhist teachings and stuff with my husband, and he's never been interested in meditation or Buddhism or any of this stuff ever. And that's not been a problem for us, he said. But in the last year and a half, one of his best friends at his job has gotten two promotions
mm,
that my husband went for. And
mm,
my husband took his friend out to lunch a few months ago and said, I want to know what's going on. How are you getting these promotions when theoretically I was ahead of you in the line? He said, I started doing a daily meditation practice and it's changed my life. And the guy went on and, all of the ways it changed his life. So woman says he's been meditating now for a few months and he wants to go do a 90-day solo retreat in the woods by himself.
mm,
I want to support my husband, his spirituality and his practice, but I've been doing this for almost 25 years and our family hasn't even missed one slice of toast because of it. And
yeah.
I don't know what to do. So he puts the card down and he says, I have a feeling I don't know which one of the women that's here because there's a lot of you. He says, I have a feeling you all have your version of this story. So I'm speaking to all of you.
Mm,
Remember, this is 1999, a Tibetan monk. He says, tell your this is what you should do when you get home tonight. Tell your husband to make dinner for you and your family, to clean it, to take out the garbage. If your kids, I don't know how old your kids are, if they need to be helped put to bed or help with their homework, whatever they need, tell them to do all of that. Rub your feet. You go take a bath while he's taking care of everything, and then have him make love to you and thank you for the last 25 years of service. That's what he should do. And he stopped. That was his advice. And it has come in and out of my dreams and meditations so many times over the years. And there's so many teachings in there. So the whole audience went like silent. Nobody could speak. And he said, there are the monks, the 25 monks that are here with me, traveling with me. Monks and nuns, their job are in monasteries. The rest
Mm,
of us at this time, we do our work in the world.
mm.
We can't hide any longer. We are needed in the world. So that's the biggest thing I took from the Dalai Lama is we're needed here in the world. Spirituality isn't something separate. It's a daily thing, and it includes loving your family, your friends, and your partners, your boyfriends, your girlfriends, your kids. It gets really simple.
Yeah. That's such a core insight. I've explained to people that meditation is great, but really meditation is a state of mind. And what you really want to get to is meditation in motion, which is being in a state of meditation every single moment
Right.
of your day. It's actually easy to, well, it's not easy, but you can learn how to meditate. It's actually really hard at the beginning. I taught Tai Chi and Kung Fu for almost 10 years, studied and taught. And, at the beginning, it's really difficult, right? You're sitting there, you're bored out of your mind, you're trying to, not think of anything, and yet you're thinking about a million things more than ever. So people get super frustrated. But I would argue, that's a brilliant point, right? It's the meditation in motion. It's being in that state of meditation in the day to day. That's really what it's about. That's the target, not just, that practice meditation. So that's a brilliant point. I love it. What's the how does it manifest itself, right? The aspect of your learnings and insights from the meditation and from Reiki, how does it manifest itself on a day-to-day basis outside of the practice?
Today, you mean? Not literally today, but today, current, you mean?
Yes.
So, I have my private practice of doing counseling and coaching and Reiki and meditation with people. And, there's lots of counselors and therapists, and this is not false humility, it's real life, that are very well trained, much more so than I am. They are more skilled than I am. But where it shows up for me, Ari, is it doesn't matter
Mm,
dark and deep and in pain or how violent and how much hate people have. I can sit with them, partially because of my past, because I've been in all of those things, and partially because it's now been almost 35 years of daily meditation. I don't
mm.
get spooked a lot. I just don't get spooked a lot. I am able to be with people's pain, their sadness, their hate, their shame, their violence, their aggression, their anger. I can be with it. And
I, I
I
want to
think
drill.
it's
I want
such,
to drill this part. Drill this point through. Why is that important? What does that? Because I think that's incredibly important. Why does that have such an important effect?
can I answer it in reverse of when that's not true, what happens?
Yes, absolutely.
Because a lot, and there's no judgment here. I mean, people are who we are. We all have our different skills. There's a lot of counselors and therapists and psychologists and social workers that they get spooked, and it's not a judgment. They're human, and they get spooked. And the client is sitting there I did this awful thing when I was 22 to my best friend or to my neighbor or to so and so, or I robbed my mom and then she had to move out. Whatever this awful thing they've done or has been done to them, they go decades with holding on to this and it ripping their lives apart. And they finally find somebody they trust and they share it, and the person isn't there for them. They lose trust in the system of mental health and support and counseling and coach and therapy and
And hold on,
psychology.
when you say isn't there for them, that's because of their natural uncontrollable response that the person picks up on and no longer feels like they're safe. They feel they're being judged. Is that the fair understanding of
It's
it?
not judged. It's overwhelmed.
Mm,
Part of the job of being a counselor or therapist is holding a safe space for people that whatever
right.
they do or say, you get to be whatever you get to be. And when that safe space isn't being held for you, like if the therapist themselves breaks into tears, or the therapist themselves starts shaking and trembling, or the therapist
Mm.
themselves can't speak, client loses their trust in the person, but they sort of lose their trust in the
In
whole
the process.
system. It's like
Yeah.
if this person went to school for 6 years, has been practicing for 8 years, and they can't handle my mess, how is my husband, my wife, my mother, my father, my best friend, how are they going to be able to hear this? Because it's sacred space. It really is. And I don't mean that in the way of religious. Working with people and their hearts, their souls, their spirits, and their bodies, it's sacred space. And it has to be treated that way. That doesn't mean that gosh, I've been doing this since 93. There hasn't been times I've cried with clients. I've gotten pissed with clients, but it's been in joining with them. This is painful, which you're going through. Nobody should have to go through it. Hold their hand and cry with them is different than I'm crying because I can't handle it. Do you
Yeah.
hear the distinction?
Absolutely.
So for me, that's one of my gifts. The other gift is because what I was trained as a kid and what I was trained as a mobster, I understand people really well. And I'm really hard to lie to, consciously or unconsciously. And it's really helpful to somebody that's even people that have been in therapy for years and done all the courses and, all the different systems. We all still lie to ourselves. It's just part of being human. I don't know. I don't remember what being human was like 2,500 years ago, but being human now, our subconscious has a field day with us. And being able to say to somebody, I know you think that's why you did this. Let's take a minute here. And I'm going to offer you another thing and invite you to close your eyes, listen to your body, and see if it agrees with what I say. And if not, we'll let it go and we'll move on. And I'll share with them what I'm picking up from their energetic system, from their emotional body, their physical body, what I'm picking up. And I'll share with them. I know you think you did this because they hurt you, but that's not what happened. There's this wound here you've been carrying for 20 years. This is that wound showing itself. Let's see what we can do to work on that wound so it becomes safe for you.
The I mean, if somebody's lying to you, maybe you can understand that, but how do you pick up on somebody lying to themselves?
I wish I could tell you how. I don't know, Ari. Like I said, I was trained, for those who weren't here for part one of this, I was trained to be a liar, manipulator, and exploiter. That's what I was trained by my father, my uncle, and my older brother. And they taught me well. I'm really smart, and I became a great liar. And because of it, I knew how to manipulate and exploit people, find their weaknesses, find their, what you would call in like gambling, find their tell. I got trained how to do this. I couldn't train anybody else how to do it because I was a teenager and I don't know what they taught me. They just taught me and I got really good at it. And then at some point, I think I shared this last time we talked, I had a counselor that encouraged me, someday you're going to want to take these skills and put them to work. I don't know
Mm.
how I got the skills. I mean it genuinely. I don't know how I got this. I mean, I know how I got the skills, but I don't know how to describe what I do.
Is it
And
is it just a feeling that this doesn't feel
it's
right?
just yeah, I just this is where all these things come together. There's all the quote unquote negative things that help me
Mm.
understand. But again, 5 years of daily meditation. I've also practiced Reiki now for 30 years, every single day, intentionally. My system is really attuned to the truth, or you can flip it upside down. My system notices what's out of alignment in me, in you, in us. It notices what's out of alignment. And my system has trained me through Reiki to know what to do with this.
So
Because it's
so
one thing
Reiki,
to, can you just give me 30 seconds more?
sure.
Thanks. So it's one thing to know, call out, this doesn't feel true. It's
Mm.
another thing to say, this doesn't feel true, and this is where it's coming from.
Mm.
Because then they can do something with it. We can do something with it. Okay, so now I can answer your question. You started to ask about Reiki.
We talked about Reiki a few times, but I don't think it's very popularly known about. Give us a little bit of a high level. What is Reiki? How did you get into it? How does it even help you?
So I'm going to tell you what Reiki in its translation to English is. And I have two Reiki masters, one here in the state, and she was my primary teacher of everything for about 20 years. And there's a a secular monk who's the longest in the Reiki lineage, who lives in Japan in Kyoto, who I also did some training with. So when you think about things like Tai Chi and Qigong and prana, we're talking about universal life force energy, which is really hard to describe if you haven't experienced it. But my words, not anybody else's words, is that magic that we feel in certain situations that could show itself as love, could show it as compassion, could show it as wisdom. It shows up in different shapes and forms. So there's that thing, but that's the key part of Reiki. The Rei, R-E-I, spelling in English, R-E-I, is spiritually guided. So what makes Reiki different, not better, but different, is there's this energy that we have access to, and it guides you on what to do with that energy. Sometimes it's simply putting your hands on somebody so they can get some rest and relaxation and peace. Sometimes it's after an operation or a surgery or a car crash to get some
Yeah.
systems back in alignment. Sometimes it's a memory from childhood that needs some balancing and needs some nourishing and needs some care. Sometimes, and this is a lot of what I do, which is Reiki counseling, is sometimes me and somebody else, I'll extend my Reiki alignment so that we're both in Reiki and we do counseling within that
Mm.
Reiki bubble. So people experience a lot of different things with Reiki. It's kind of hard to describe it. On some level, it's like saying, so what is water? Well, water is, one part oxygen, two part, and it's liquid, but that doesn't really tell what water is. Reiki is
Mm.
another thing. It's just like love. You could give a definition of love, but it doesn't even get in the neighborhood of what love is. Reiki has a degree of that as well. It's like I literally could talk for 45 minutes without you speaking once, without taking a drink, without going to the bathroom, and tell what Reiki is, and I still haven't touched the surface. Does that give us something, do you think, to work with?
You know what? I've done Tai Chi for, as I said, for 10 years. And I was also teaching. I was the senpai, which is Japanese for teacher's assistant, basically. So I wasn't the sensei, but I was the assistant. And I'm not sure that after 10 years of learning and teaching, I can explain what Qi is. Qi is the Chinese pronunciation, I think, if keep me honest here.
Yes.
Chi key, different versions of it. So I mean, your attempt is as good as mine, my friend. I will say that meditation was very difficult for me, and Tai Chi was very difficult for me initially, but it did change my life in many ways. And I would, if you're out there and you're looking to start a journey of self-awareness, that is as good as any place to start. So I would highly recommend it. Let
Can
me,
I throw a
Michael, believe it.
meditation? Can I throw in a
Absolutely.
pitch in here as well?
Yes,
In
absolutely.
parallel to what you just shared, we have so many options through technology on how to learn and get trained in meditation these days, and the hundreds of different forms of sitting, lying down, walking, and movement meditation. If you're new and you keep trying different things and none of them feel right, literally just pick one of them. It sort of almost doesn't matter, and do it every day for 90 days for some set amount of time, whether it be 3 minutes or 7 minutes or 10 minutes, and just do it regardless and dive in and try it. Give it enough time to go through your discomfort. Give it enough time for your system to understand we're sitting still right now. Give it enough time for your brain to say, this is different than at 10 o'clock in the morning when I got to do this and I have to do this. It takes a little bit for our brains and our bodies and our spirits to slow down and say, you're doing something new here. Okay. And it takes a little while. Just have patience with yourself. Everybody sucks at meditation in the beginning. We
Yes.
do in varying degrees. It's part of it and it's natural, and don't fight it. I tried to fight it because I didn't have a teacher. There wasn't any apps. There wasn't any of this. I just kind of read a book and it said do it. And I'm like, okay, I'll do it. I'm exaggerating, but sort of. And I did it all wrong. And I eventually, my system months later taught me how to do it right in spite of myself. But what
Yeah.
I did wrong. And it still got me where I needed to eventually.
Yeah. The I think the beauty of your advice is that, you don't have to be perfect right away. You don't have to get it right on day one. All you need to do is take a tiny little step forward. And by giving you that 90 days of persistence, then you'll take tiny little steps forward over those 90 days and you will get there. My advice is exactly that. It's totally okay to fail. You don't need to get to some, amazing state of zen that your friend who may be full of shit describes that they're in or not in. All you need to do is take one baby step forward. And if that one baby step forward for you was, meditating for an extra minute, that's all you need. Be kind with yourself. Don't judge yourself. Remember, it's a journey. It's not an outcome. And just take one step forward. That's all. And the other, if I may, even though I'm not the guest today, the other piece of advice I would give is don't set yourself up for a target. Oh, I need to meditate for 30 minutes. And if I didn't do that, I failed. Put yourself to just one task and one task only. I need to sit down to meditate. That's it. The second you've sat down to meditate, whether it's for a minute or 5 minutes or 10 minutes, that's success. Just make sure you're doing, creating that habit day in, day out. All you need to do is start. And this is really based on a lot of research around how to create habits in a meaningful and long-lasting way. So these are at least some tips that have helped me, because I felt like, at least at the beginning of my journey, every time I felt like every time was a failure, and that doesn't help you persist, does it?
No, it doesn't. And I just like to add some ridiculousness to all of this. Somewhere along the way, it doesn't matter because then it won't get too far back in my story. Somebody had given me a specific meditation to do for 90 days. And about 2 weeks into it, he asked me, how's it going? Oh, well, I'm working on it. I'm trying my best. And, feeding him a lot of shit, And he puts his hand on my shoulder. He says, Michael, if you're anything like me, at this point, your 2 weeks of meditation has been cursing at me under your breath in meditation. And I go, well, that's happened a few times. And he said, a few times? I go, okay, it's happened almost every time. He goes, you didn't realize it, but you've picked a subject to meditate on. He goes, you're doing your job well. So, of course, me being the rebel I am, I'm like, okay, well, now I'm not going to think about him, and I'm not going to curse him out, and I'm going to do something else, and I'm going to read the parts, the things he told me to read and reflect on. I'm going to read them, and I'm going to memorize them. And to give him the finger one way, then we made it to give him the finger the other way. And that's sort of how I learned how to meditate.
Michael, what an absolute pleasure. Believe it or not, we are way over time. We usually stop after 30 minutes.
That seems to be my job.
This is the theme. This has been so much fun. I asked you the normal question of what would you advise yourself at your hardest point. We're on the second show, so I need to ask you a new question. Okay. What would you advise somebody who's on their journey? And it's this journey of, I call it self-awareness, right? It's a dangerous thing to embark on because sometimes you find things that you don't want to find out, and it can be painful. But if somebody in our audience is committed down this journey of self-awareness, what would you advise could be a possible first step?
Opposition. One, have some patience and compassion for yourself because you're new at this, and new could mean 1 or 2 years into it. And this is my teacher, Betsy, Reiki master. This comes from her. And don't give yourself a note from home getting out of doing your work. If you've committed to doing yoga every day, do your yoga every day. Don't give yourself, oh, well, I'm back in 1972, or I ate too much last night and my stomach's... Do your yoga. If you can't do it in the morning, do it in the afternoon. You can't do it in the afternoon, do it at night. Or if it's walking meditation, or if it's breathing, or if it's Tai Chi, whatever it is that you're doing, give yourself compassion and empathy and patience around your process. But don't give yourself notes from home so that you don't have to do your work.
That is the easiest way to break a habit.
Yes. Can I leave us all with a great quote that I heard? And the guy I heard it from isn't who wrote it, but I still never figured out who wrote it.
Absolutely.
To me, this is about the spiritual journey, less about us as individuals. We can't do it alone, and nobody can do it for us.
Brilliant.
Can't do it alone, and nobody can do it for us. I have made such a reversal and whole thing in my life, and it's a miracle on top of a miracle on top of a miracle. And yes, I worked really hard, and yes, I was consistent, and yes, I stayed to the commitment. At no point was I ever doing this by myself. Not 1 minute of it.
Michael, what an absolute pleasure. Thank you for coming on the show. I enjoyed this tremendously.
Thanks for having me.